Hey everybody, this is Tim Koval with Gumshoe Stories, and we're live on Missy Bevers, episode 8, Murder Map. Can everybody hear me okay? I hope you can. Just taking a look to see who all we've got in here. Looks like we've got about 8 folks in here already, so that's great. Can you guys hear me? Somebody say something in the comments if you can hear me okay. Okay. Carolyn Christian says, sounds good. So, appreciate that. All right, so how's everybody doing today? Hope you're all doing well. We're doing another live podcast, the second one, I guess, for Gumshoe Stories. We did one last week that I thought went pretty well. And today we're going to, instead of just making it open to talk about anything, although we will, maybe talk about some other things, what I'd like to kind of focus on today is talking about the map of the church, the layout of the church, and the surveillance video that has been released to us in correspondence to that layout. Because I think that the more we know, the better. And the more we understand about that church and the way that it's laid out and where the killer went at certain times and what he was doing, I think that being able to have a handle on that is a pretty important thing. And hang on one second, let me change my layout here. I didn't know I was in split format. Now I think I'm solo, so that's good. Okay, so anyway, I'm still learning my way as I go with the podcast stuff. So this, that's a work in progress, learning how to do this. But as I said, we want to look at the layout of the church, the video and correspondence to that, and then see what it tells us, see if that affects our theories of the case, and then kind of go from there. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put up a video. And I'm not sure if I can talk over this video or not. Let's see how it goes. Okay, can anyone actually hear me right now? If you can, say that you can hear me in the comments. Because I'm not sure if the video overlay kind of turned my audio off or not. Can anyone hear me? Okay, I'm going to switch back to me. Okay, switching back to me. My question, I don't know if anybody could hear me as I was talking while I had the map up. So can someone in the comments address that? Can you tell me whether you could hear me? Okay, you could hear me over the video. Okay, thank you, Sanino. All right, so I'm going to go back and then I'll do my voiceover. I just didn't want to talk on and on and on and not have you be able to hear me. It was the first time I had done that. So, okay, so this is the church. And I don't have the technical expertise just yet to zoom in while we're looking at video, so I'm just going to leave it up in that format, but I think we can kind of hit some of the highlights, although you may or may not be able to see those room numbers very well. But before we even get to the room numbers, let's talk about the outside of the church, the external area. And by the way, what I've done here is I took a diagram that a lot of people, not just me, I'd like to send a shout out to a gentleman. His username on WebSleuths was Jethro4WS, and he did a lot of the early legwork of coming up with a diagram of the church. Also had a lot of input from Barry Bailey, so I do want to say thank you to both of those people for helping us get to a diagram where we can feel 100% confident that this is the way the church is laid out. Okay, and what I've done is I've taken that diagram and I've overlaid it on top of the roof of the satellite photo of the church. So this is, yeah, this is it. And you can see down at the very bottom left corner, just the edge of the highway. And that highway runs kind of diagonal to the church. All right, but talking about the church property itself, let me point to room number 7. If you guys can look kind of at the top part of the church, the north part of the church in the middle, you see room 7. It's kind of a lavender color. This is the kitchen. This is where the killer entered. You see one door at the back there. Hang on a second. Yeah, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to go back. Let's go back. Going back to our clip of the church. I don't know what happened there. It's every couple of minutes it's kind of gonna reset on me, but that's okay. Hopefully you can see it back up there now. So room 7 is where the killer entered. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, where did the killer park? If the killer wasn't dropped off by somebody, then he had to park a car back here uh, behind the church or whatever. So looking at the church, you can see toward the right of your screen and then toward the top of the screen, see that entire area of parking spaces that are to the north of the church? I think that's kind of an overflow area, and plenty of room back there for someone to park a car and then walk to the church from there, even though it was raining. There's no street lamps, no light posts over there the way that there are at the other part around the building of the church. And I'm going to put this diagram, a link to it in the description later on, so you guys can zoom in and do whatever you need to do on it. But in my best guess, the car was parked either right at the edge up there where trying to think how to say it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up on. I'm going to do something a little bit different here if you guys will bear with me. I think it'll be easier to go through stuff this way. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys, if there's not too much of a glare, which there seems to be. Okay. This is going to be like a weatherman trying to figure out where to point his finger. But see where my finger is right here, where this little car is? That would be a good spot for the killer to have parked, because there are trees right there. And like I said, there's no light. So that would be an excellent place for the killer to park. Another potential area would be like right around in here somewhere. I don't think that they would have parked along the driveway right here, because the highway would be visible from there. So, just speculation, but I think, if it were me, I'd be parking over here or somewhere over here. And then, as we said, came in through room 7. So right around in here. Everybody able to see this okay? We switch over to the comments and let's just take a breath here for a second. Let's just take a look at our comments, make sure. Just a sub says, hey, Gumshoe Chad, I've been looking forward to this. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Okay, we're talking about the church and the layout of the church. And here's the church. I'll grab my pen here. Maybe I can do some better pointing there. Okay. So comes in here, right around here. And then he's going to go to the west, toward the highway. Okay, so that's going this way. If you remember, when we looked at the surveillance video, we see him coming out of room 8, which is down this way. It's next to the kitchen. It's basically a dining room. The killer comes out of room 8 and then goes west, kind of running his hand down the wall, or her hand down the wall. If you remember that part, we'll show it here in a minute if we have a chance. And then they go out of frame, and then we don't really see them over here. We don't really see them coming back down to the south until they pop up a little bit closer to the awning entrance, which is down here. Okay, so we've got a camera angle here that picks them up coming out of the kitchen, and then we've got a camera angle here pointing this way that picks them up. And that's when they start to pry into room number 1, which is really not a room but more of a utility closet. And then they give up prying on that, and that's when they continue on around this hallway. And in this hallway, they go to the Dutch door room, which is room 21. And then they continue on from there and disappear. It then picks up, and they're up here coming out of room 10 and breaking out the glass of room 9. That's at the very end of the video. Although that's not what really happened chronologically. And that's something I want to talk a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about the order of the video of SWFA. And what I'm going to do right now as we talk is I'm going to try to go to a video clip from the actual from the SWFA surveillance, not SWFA, but from the church surveillance video. So give me just a second to find that. Yeah, I'm actually going to have to find that here. Thanks, you guys, for bearing with me. I know this isn't going entirely smoothly, but that's my fault. Trying to handle all these different video elements that we're talking about. Ah, there's the church surveillance. Found it. Give me just 1 second to start it playing here. Rosalinda Ramirez says he obviously knew where to park, no stranger to the parking area. Um, what makes you think that the person was not a stranger to the parking area? Is that just something that you say based upon the theory you've already arrived at, or as you watch the layout of the church that tells you something? So Nino says, very risky parking a car anywhere in the church parking lot. Police probably pull into the church at night to check on things, and to see a car there would be trouble for the intruder. True, that would be a problem if a police car did pull in on patrol during the time that the killer was there. However, it was raining hard that night, and statistics show, and I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, that police do not patrol as often. That the frequency is less when it's raining hard for whatever reason. They don't like going out and doing it. Okay, we're going to go through the video. And if you do have the map, it'd be great if you could kind of look at it as we go here. All right, the killer has just come out of room 8. And now it switches all the way more toward the southwest. There's a camera that is at the southwest entrance. At the very bottom of your screen, that would be where the camera is. And it is right above the awning entrance. And so right now the killer is trying to pry into room 1. Across from room 1, you see those kind of louvered doors there. It says Holy Grounds up above that. That's the little coffee kiosk. So when you refer to your map later on, you'll see Holy Grounds and you'll see room 1. That's where the killer is right now. It's almost 4 o'clock at this point. And we know that from one clip that had timestamps on it. None of the rest of them have had timestamps. So it's about 4 o'clock. They're now going down the hallway that goes toward the east. So it would be at the bottom of your diagram. And they're at the Dutch door room, the split door room, which is room 21. This is a room for small children. So that's why they have the Dutch door there, so that they can leave the top part open and keep the bottom part closed so that the kids don't wander out. Okay, now you see the person went away and then they came back and their headlamp is on. They're going into the auditorium right now. And then it switches to another scene. This is not where they just went into. It's a totally different clip. What they're doing in this scene is they've come out of room 10 and they're breaking the little vertical glass window that's in room 9 so they can reach in and just unlock the door that way rather than trying to pry through it. I'm going to go ahead and start this playing again. And, you heard me say that there was something that's out of sequence. What's out of sequence is that part at the very end needs to be switched. It needs to come before the end of the video rather than right at the very end of the video. And I'm going to show you the point where it goes once we get around to that here in just a few minutes. This is just a 2-minute video, so it doesn't take long to get back there. I wish that I could start and stop it, but don't really know a good way to do that. And so we're just going to let it play. But remember that scene where the person is coming out of a door and then hammering out the glass. He's coming out of room 10 and hammering out of room 9. Keep that sequence in your mind. That's at the very end of the video as the police have released it to us. Okay, right now the killer has gone to the Dutch door room. In just a moment, he's going to go further down. The offices are down here, by the way. That's important. If this person were after money or tithes and offerings. Okay, see how he's disappeared from view, and then all of a sudden he's going to pop back in? There he is, popping back in and walking back toward us. Right before he popped back in, I want you in your mind to insert the sequence that was at the very end, the sequence that's playing right now as I'm watching it. Take this sequence and put it right before the killer is walking back toward the camera. I have about a 95% confidence that I'm right about this, that MPD was just releasing videos in camera order rather than in chronological order. And so because both of those scenes were from the same camera, they released them together. But I don't believe that that's the way it should have been. So if we go back to our photo of the church, we want to know what I'm going to do. Just 1 second here. On my camera, I'm going to switch to back camera. And that's going to help me out here, I think. Because now I can just point down at this a little bit easier and point the things out that we're talking about. Okay, so again, killer comes in right around here. This is room 7. Walks down this hallway. We don't see them. They put their hand on the wall, right around in here somewhere. They actually go into the kitchen here, and then you see there's a little door that goes into room 8 because the kitchen and the dining room are kind of, related to one another. And so they come out right here. This is when we first see them on camera. It's when they come out. There's 2 doors here on room 8, and they come out of the one that's not the one closest to the end of the hall, but the other one. They come out here, and they walk this way, and that's when they're putting their hand down the wall. And then we don't see any footage from the rest of the way going west. And then we don't see any footage at all from up here pointing this way, which either the camera wasn't working or they don't have a camera there. Because we don't have any footage looking back this direction toward the east, and we don't have any footage from here looking to the south. So leads me to believe that we have 2 cameras over here. We have no cameras here. The footage picks up coming out of room 2 and going to room 1, where they try to pry into the door and then give up on it. Okay, Holy Grounds is right around in here. So they give up and then they walk this way. Room 21 is right here. This is the split door room. And at this point, it's changed cameras. So there was a camera here that was looking this way. Okay, and that camera picked up the killer, walking, trying to pry into room 1 and then walking across to the other hallway. Now that they're at the Dutch door room, they're picked up by a camera over here that looks this way. So again, in this corner, you've got 2 cameras, one looking this way, one looking this way. Up here, you don't have any cameras, or at least we don't have any footage from those cameras if they exist. So Dutch door room, the killer looks in that room briefly, and then goes on down. You've got offices down here. There's a copy room that has a Xerox copier in it. And remember in the footage, they get down this way, and then they disappear, and then they pop back up, and they're walking back this way. That's at the point where I want you to insert, before they walk back this way, I want you to insert the footage from up here. When they come out of room 10 and try to break or do break into room 9. Because to me, it doesn't make sense that the killer would come down this way and then turn around and go back this way. Because that leaves this part of the church unexplored. And up until this point, as far as we can tell, this killer has been systematic. He came out of the kitchen and dining room area, and then he went in a counterclockwise way. Even though we don't have footage from over here, it picks up about almost 10 minutes later when he's down here. So we assume that he checked these rooms out and then continued on. We know that he continued on down this way. So it doesn't make sense to me that he would turn around and come back this way. I also find it interesting that the headlamp is on when he's coming back, and he didn't have a headlamp on when he was coming this way toward the camera. But there is a headlamp on when he's coming back this way. So what I believe happened is the killer comes out of the offices and continues on down the hall in footage that we don't have. Goes up this hall, explores these rooms on the outside, gets to room 10, probably goes into the first door of room 10 because it's a large room. This is a room where the youth group meets. So the high schoolers, junior high schoolers, they meet in here. Goes in the first door, and I think because he's coming up this hall and going in this door, the camera that looks this way activates because there's movement. And that's why the camera's already activated when this door opens and the killer comes out. So the camera that's facing this way, and remember there was also another camera facing this way that caught the killer for the first time coming out of the kitchen. But this camera facing this way catches the killer trying to break into room 9. And that's the end of the video that we see. But what I believe happened is he finished up with room 9. He came down here. He's already, at this point, he's completed all the exterior rooms, the outward facing rooms of the church. And now he starts on the interior with room 9. Then he comes down, and here's room 14, which I believe is where the praise and worship team would gather, maybe during the service or just before the service. I believe that he probably would have checked into that room and then comes around the corner, and I think that's when we get that sequence that was out of order where he just all of a sudden pops up and his headlamp is on. I think he probably turned his headlamp on when he was in the offices. Comes up this way, goes into the auditorium, and that's the last we see. So I believe that chronologically, the last known point of this killer is when he or she goes into the auditorium. Don't know anything beyond that because that's all that we have. Just switch back. Okay, let's turn our attention to some of the comments and see what you guys are saying. Hopefully that made some sense. I'm not seeing any additional comments, but maybe I'm not in the right place. Okay. I do see some comments now. Daisy Warner says, what room do you think she was killed in? Well, I don't believe she, just me, I don't believe she was killed in her room. I believe she was killed in the foyer. Um, let me go back to my photos here. Again, I don't know this for sure. I'm not going to try to switch cameras again. Just bring this up. Okay. See this right here? This is the main entrance foyer. So it's the west side of the church, kind of halfway down. I think that's where she was, because she could be there and it's not in the hallway. So that the campers who had gathered underneath the awning and were waiting because they thought the door was locked, even though it wasn't really locked, they wouldn't have been able to see her if she was in the foyer. If she was in the hallway, they would have seen her. They would have called 911, but they didn't do that. So you have to think she was somewhere that the campers could not see. So she was either in a room or she was in the foyer. We have a CSI report from Ellis County where the CSI technician describes being led into the church and where he was led to. And based on his wording, it sounds like he was led into the foyer. He didn't say through the foyer to somewhere else. He said into the foyer to the north, which it was north of where he entered. So that's my best guess, is that she was in the foyer. I think it's best that we don't know for sure, because the police need to have some things that only they know for sure, so that they can, test tips that they get or a killer's confession as to whether it's legitimate or not. Sanino's asking me if I've walked the killer's walk in the church. No, I have not. I've been to the church at night and went around the outside, but obviously no one was there and it was locked. So I have not walked the killer's walk. And Lee says, I appreciate the numbering of the rooms. Actually, those are not my numbers. Those are, the church's numbers. Those numbers are beside the room. If you were to go to that church today, you would see room 10 and see a 10 little numbers right there on the wall beside the room. The church was very organized in the way they did this church when they had it built, and they did have it built from ground up for their purpose. And so room 1 kind of starts over there close by the main entrance, the west entrance, and then clockwise it goes in numerical order all the way around to the final number is 21, which is the Dutch door room. For about the first 2 years of this case, and I did not want to delve into the church layout because I'm just not, I'm not good with maps. I'm not good with directional things, and it's a little more detail. It makes my head hurt. So honestly, I let a lot of other people do a lot of the heavy lifting in the beginning, and then at about the 2-year mark, I started to look at it a little bit more, and it started to make sense. And let me say this about one reason why I think it's important to understand this. There's so many people who think that this is a targeted murder, and I'm not saying it isn't, okay? It very well could be. The person could have come there with every intention of killing Missy, knowing who she was, knowing what their plan was, and executing their plan. But I think it is possible that it was wrong place, wrong time. And the reason I think that is when you understand the layout of the church and the timing of the killer, you see the killer walking right in front of that entrance. The entrance that she's going to walk in through in mere minutes. And this person doesn't even look. I'm going to go ahead and play that video again, just so that you'll see what I'm talking about here. After we do this, I'm going to focus on the comments and see if there's any questions I can answer, because I do want this to be interactive. I don't mean to leave you guys out and just have a monologue, but I did want to cover some things first, and then we can make it more of an interactive thing here in just a few minutes. Okay, killer just came out of room 2. Now he's trying to get into room 1. And whenever I say he, don't get hung up on that, okay? Because I just do it for simplicity's sake. I try to say they, because that covers both gender bases. But sometimes I slip up. But that doesn't mean I think it's a he. In fact, if I had to guess, and a lot of it is this sequence that you're looking at right here, and the way the person is positioning and balancing their weight on their legs, just seems kind of feminine. And a lot of people have said that, especially right here. Right here. Doesn't that seem feminine to you? Okay, now the killer walks, and this is that's what I meant to point out to you. In that sequence that we just saw, at no time did that killer even look at the entrance. We play it one more time. When it gets back around to there, you'll see they've been trying to pry into room 1, and then they give up on it and they walk toward the Dutch tour room, which places them walking right past the awning entrance, and they're looking over at the holy ground doors. They're looking to their left rather than their right, and they're not even paying any attention when someone could be coming through that door any moment. It's 4 o'clock. A lot of times Missy would get there closer to 4. She was actually running a little bit tighter schedule than normal that morning when she got there at 4:16. So this killer could not know for sure that she wasn't going to come walking through that door. And that's what makes me really lean toward untargeting. I'm not saying that it's for sure. It's just a question. Okay, we seem to have stopped. Let me play this again. Hey guys, sorry I was interrupted there for a little bit, but this video is playing. You just saw this person walk past the entrance without so much as a glance. And then I'm going to show one more thing, and then we'll take a break from videos and diagrams and get into some of your comments. I want to show you the point where the killer is walking back toward the auditorium. Remember, it's out of sequence. They've already been around to room 10 and room 9. They've been through the offices and spent some unknown period of time. Now they're coming back. So chronologically, this is the end. It's sometime after 4. Killer walks and turns right into the auditorium. And you saw where the doors were. You could see the doors in that video. Never even looked toward the entrance. So those are the things that are troubling to me about that. All right, this video is going to be ending here in just a second. And so now let's get back to the comments here. I'm going to scroll up through the comments here. Hey, everybody, I'm right back where we were. Daisy, glad you're here. Daisy says, do you think the headlamp is on to obscure the view of the face? No, I don't think so. I think that the headlamp is on for its normal purpose, which would be to illuminate something in a hands-free kind of way. Because remember, this person is walking around with at least one tool in their hand. We have a good idea that they also have a gun, although they're not carrying it in their hand. It's somewhere on their body. There's also a pry tool that's in their vest. They got a lot of things going on, and so if they go into an area that isn't already lit, then that headlamp is going to be something that's going to be really handy for them. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. I understand the exterior cameras were not working, but there was a light-colored Nissan caught on camera down the street. Are there any persons of interest with such a car? Yeah, I mean, police have not, really been adamant about thinking that the car is involved, but there are search warrants out there where they've mentioned the car, and they do seem to think that it's related. But as far as we know, they haven't tracked down who the driver of that car was. They were unable to get license plate information. They seem to kind of go down a rabbit hole of thinking there was a bumper sticker on the back of the car, which I've shown was just a reflection from the SWFA logo on the side of the building. But that car is certainly a car of interest, and whoever's driving it should be a person of interest, but I don't think that they ever identified yet who that person is. Daisy, glad you can make the live. Let's see what other questions we have. Thank you for being here, Dr. Tuttle. Appreciate the kind words. Dr. Tuttle says many people think that because the murder was not on camera, that it was in a room, but I believe the northwest camera was not working, and the working southwest camera motion detection was not set far enough. And yeah, I agree with you there, although I don't know if there was a camera at the northwest. It could be that this church thought that it was enough to have two cameras at the southwest that were pointing north and east, and then two cameras diagonally at the other end of the building, pointing west and south. Because, it's just, strange to me that we don't have camera footage from the other two corners of the church, leading me to believe that they thought that they could cover everything they needed to cover with 4 cameras total. But I don't know that for sure. Daisy says, have you heard about the video footage of Missy entering the church? Apparently she was distracted by a loud noise. Unsure if this is true. Someone claimed to view it who was close to LE. Okay, there's a little bit of misunderstanding here. In the HLN video, what's it called? Lies, Crime, and Video, or Crime, Lies, and Video, that did an episode on Missy's case. They interviewed the foot doctor, Dr. Nierenberg, who has been working on this case. And he said that police had shown him footage that had not been released to the public, and that it shows Missy going inside and then turning because something's caught her attention, whether visually or hearing it. He doesn't know because it doesn't have any audio, but something catches her attention, and then she goes toward that, and that's the only footage he's seen, and so it exists, but it hasn't been released. Um, it's not footage that shows the attack though. It's just footage basically from the same camera angles that we've seen that showed the killer when they were trying to pry into room 1. You could see how far that camera angle went. It basically goes up to room 2 and then it blanks out because there's not a camera down at the other end, or else that camera at the other end wasn't working. I don't think there was a camera at the other end, but um, yeah, they have the footage from that camera showing Missy going in and starting up that hallway, and then it cuts off and it doesn't show the altercation with the suspect. That's quite all right for all the comments, Daisy. My dog is named Daisy, so I like your name. Yeah, Sonino, I see you agree with me that there doesn't seem any concern on this person's part that someone could be coming in the door. So to me, you can think two things from that. One, you can think wrong place, wrong time. You can think that this person thought that they had chosen a building and a time when they would be completely by themselves and wouldn't have to worry about anybody coming in for hours. That's one possibility. Possibility number two is that they totally don't care. Well, actually, no. Let me back up. Possibility number two is they didn't do their homework um, as well as they should have to know that she had early birds at 4:30 and they thought the class was at 5. So that's a possibility, that they knew Missy was coming, but they thought she was coming later. To me, my problem with that is most of the people who think that this person targeted Missy think that they planned everything to a T and that the time frame was just so perfect and everything. And so that kind of flies in the face of, well, this killer didn't do their homework and they thought the class started at 5 and she wouldn't get there till close to 5. Well, if he was targeting her, if he was stalking her and looking into all this and planning it, would he really make that mistake? It's kind of how I feel about it. This is an interesting question. Dr. Tuttle says, why were the back northeast doors damaged? I know they were boarded up. Was the perp trying to make more exits for their escape or just jacking up the place? That is one of the remaining unanswered questions of this case, Dr. Tuttle, and your guess is as good as mine, actually, because we just don't know. Um, the damage that occurred at that end of the building, there were 2 windows that were up off the ground that were broken. We don't know if they were broken out or broken in because police haven't told us. Then there was the door that had the little vertical window broken out, and that was the service door to the kitchen that the killer entered. And then there were these northeast doors, this entrance, that has the glass doors, just like the ones that Missy entered through, but catty corner diagonally at the other end of the building. Those were damaged in some way. We don't know how badly they were damaged, but yeah, you've seen the photo. I've seen the photo that shows plywood placed over those 2 doors. Was it to cover damage, or was it to keep people from being able to see inside? I guess that's a possibility too, because you had reporters wandering around taking photos. So I guess it's possible that it wasn't to cover up damage, but to obstruct a view into the building if there was something on that north side. But that just doesn't seem where the action happened. The action seemed to happen more toward the west to southwest. And police even said Missy was found at the southwest corner, although I don't believe that that's totally accurate, because if she was at the corner, she would have been right inside those doors, and campers would have been able to see her. And I just don't think that that happened that way. Let's work through here and see what else we have here. Ann Lee says, interesting point about the killer appearing to not glance at the entrance. However, a few seconds before, they are face on with the entrance. They would see headlights or perhaps expect headlights. Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe so. I'm not sure how much of a glare there is from the lights and everything from where they were, and um, whether it might have been tinted or whatnot. Um, Based upon me going to the church and looking in from the outside, I'm just trying to think about if someone were on the inside, what could they actually see? Um, I don't know if they could see very much unless they actually walked up to the entrance rather than looking at it from where room 1 was. Um, so I don't know. Coco Smala, glad you're here. So why use such an elaborate disguise just to not burgle the church? If we follow that stream of thought untargeted, why not just leave without killing her? Well, why does anybody in a random violence kind of way, breaking into a liquor store or a convenience store or breaking into someone's home, why does anybody ever end up dead in those situations? A mugging. Why does anybody end up dead in those situations? I don't know. They just do. Because a person who is already in the midst of committing a crime, they don't stop and do a mental checklist of how many years am I going to get if I pull this trigger. Everything is spur of the moment, and decisions are made in milliseconds, and then you can't take them back. So so I personally reject the idea that, well, if this had been a burglary, there's no way that the killer would have killed, that they would have stopped themselves short of that. I wish that criminals had restraint like that, but they don't. The elaborate disguise, I mean, I agree, it's a lot to put on. You got to put on a helmet, you got to put on this tactical vest with all the pockets and everything, but it is handy. It's handy to have that tactical vest because if you've got a hammer and a pry bar and some other stuff, you can just put it in those pockets. Um, and in case you do encounter someone while you're there, it gives you some protection. And a lot of this stuff is water resistant that police wear. So the pants, water resistant. The helmet keeps your head dry. Um, the vest keeps your torso dry. The boots probably water resistant as well. It was raining hard. And maybe that disguise was readily available to that person. Maybe that person could be the spouse of a police officer. That person maybe ordered it over the internet, but I'm more inclined to think that it was just something that was readily available. They didn't have to come up with a disguise of their own. They put on something that was hanging in a closet, perhaps. Maybe that's just my speculation. Sonino, good question. Were the lights on in the room where Missy was found? Well, again, we don't know that she was found in a room. She may have just been in the main foyer. But one thing that I will point out is that there are lights that stay on in that church at night. If you go to my channel and you look at view from the awning entrance at that video, that's where I go up to the doors there at the awning entrance where Missy walked through. It's 11 o'clock at night, and that church is well lit at that point. It's like every other fluorescent light, or maybe every third fluorescent light, is on because they're wired to stay on. They're emergency lights. If you come in and flip the light switch, then you turn on the rest of the lights. But if you turn off the light switch, you're never in complete darkness in that church. It's a security measure. And a lot of buildings, a lot of commercial buildings are like that. So the lights, were going to be on, and for that killer, that's why you see those hot spots on their helmet, hot spots on the floor. Those are reflections from the fluorescent lights in the ceiling that were on at the time. Callie Allen, if killer didn't know exterior cameras weren't working, he probably would park out of range. But killer doesn't look wet. Is that a clue that he parked close and knew the exterior cameras didn't work? Well, one thing we know about the killer from what police have told us is that the killer spent some time in the kitchen. So we see them emerge from the kitchen at 3:50, but that doesn't mean that they had just broken in at 3:50. What's in a kitchen? Towels, paper towels, cloth towels. I think it's very possible that this person, was damp when they came in to the kitchen, but they spent some time in there drying off. And that's why they look so dry once they do emerge into the interior of the church. I don't know that for sure, just speculation. Um, I don't think this killer could have known whether exterior cameras were working or were not working. Um, to me, a trap that we fall into sometimes as amateur sleuths and looking at a case is we tend to think that the killer is more intelligent and more all-knowing than they really are. I don't think this killer could have reasonably known what cameras were working and what cameras were not working. So I think they parked wherever they parked to make sure they couldn't be seen from the highway. That's what I thought they were doing. Rosalinda says the intruder didn't seem to steal anything. True, they didn't seem to steal anything. But let me just give you a scenario, a possible scenario. What if the killer is only there to steal money? They think, okay, this is a church. Maybe they thought about going to SWFA. Maybe that's why the car was at SWFA earlier. And then they decide that's like fourth place. Maybe it's not the best choice. So then they go up to the nearest, good sized building, the church. And they think, okay, well, it's a church. Maybe there's money here. It is Monday morning. Maybe there's money from yesterday, from the services. So if that's the only thing that they're after and they don't take anything, you could see that happening because either they found that the tithes and offerings were kept in a safe that they couldn't really break into. They didn't have the right tools or right knowledge to break into a safe if there was one. Or maybe the church goes ahead and makes a deposit on Sunday at the bank. So maybe, the tithes and offerings were gone already. But the fact that they didn't take anything on camera, that doesn't mean to me that they weren't there to try to take something, if that makes sense. Zelda says, I'm convinced the murderer has a prosthetic leg. She swings it to get it in place. You're not the first person to mention a prosthetic leg, Zelda. And, it's an interesting theory. I'm going to do a podcast soon that delves more into the way the killer walks. And I've got some interesting animation that somebody put together that kind of strips off all of the garments that this person is wearing to where it's just a silhouette of the person walking. And it's very interesting to look at in that way. So we'll be doing that in an upcoming podcast. It was apparently raining heavy that morning. What do you make of the suspect not appearing wet? We kind of covered that already just a minute ago. Mustaf, you were probably typing this before I answered that, but yeah, I think that they would have dried off in the kitchen. Would be a good guess. Okay, Callie Allen says, don't believe it was a simple theft, nothing stolen, and some random thief would not wear that getup. I believe she was targeted. Seems killer knew about 5 a.m. class, but not the early bird. And you may be right. To me, it just seems weird that if somebody's going to target Missy and look at her schedule, that they wouldn't look at it thoroughly enough to know when she actually got there and when other people would actually get there. It seems not in keeping with, what everybody's saying about thinking that the killers really planned this out. And you also say, that you don't think some random thief would wear that get up. Possibly. But if it was available to you, if you didn't have to work too hard to get into that getup, and if you knew that the place, maybe they'd already cased it, a week before, a few days before, or whatever, maybe they had already thought about breaking into that church, and they saw those signs that we've seen that are on the church property that say property under video surveillance. So, number one, you make sure you drive a vehicle that can't be traced. So you drive either a stolen vehicle or a vehicle where you've switched the plates out, and then you wear something that's going to conceal you well enough. And if this was a getup that was readily available to them, then excellent choice, right? Because it did its job. Dr. Tuttle, do we know what a typical Monday would be like for the church? Do the elders meet at a certain time? Is there a church secretary that shows up? Um, Good questions. I don't know. I don't know what the church's regular business office hours were. Um, I don't even know if Monday was kind of an off day. It's possible that it could have been because you've had a busy day on Sunday. Maybe maybe a church of that size, maybe they don't keep regular hours Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe the day after Sunday is a day off, and then they come in Tuesday. But then again, I could be wrong about that. They could have just had regular 8 to 5 hours Monday. So I don't know. Sudano says Occam's razor. For those who don't know, um, Occam's razor is you look at everything, at all the possibilities, and you try to eliminate everything you can, and whatever you're left with, is probably the most likely scenario, no matter how complicated it might be, no matter how out there or how simple it might be. If you've eliminated others, then that's what you're left with. The simplest solution is usually best. I think that's a better way of saying it. Um, Sedano says, I thought I heard they had a dog catch a scent that led them through the back parking lot to the trail with the car tracks. I have not heard that, Sedano. Um, they had a dog on the property, but the only dog that we know of was Titan, the drug sniffing dog. I'm sorry, not drug sniffing dog. Titan. Titan's expertise was in gunpowder, gun residue, explosives. He was uh, he was from the local ATF office, so his expertise was not drugs. His expertise was not catching the scent of a person. His expertise was specifically related to firearms and explosives and their residues. Sudano says, any thoughts on coming from airport? That area is really rugged around there. Um, I think that whoever got to the church, the killer or the killer being dropped off or whatever the case may be, I think they traveled by highway. There's going to be barbed wire fences, there's trees, there's mud. I just don't think anybody traveled to this church except by highway. I don't think you had anybody, on a four-wheeler or walking or trying to navigate all that terrain. Because when you look at the satellite view of that church area and the areas around it where the airport is, and and across the way where SWFA is, there's not a lot around there. And on a rainy, stormy night, I sure would not be on foot in that area. Okay. Callie Ann says you were making a good point about not being more careful to know about her schedule. But get up to me means body type is being disguised. Most criminals wear a hoodie, maybe a baklava, sunglasses. A lot of times they do. You're right. Um, But let's talk about gender. If you're female, is it enough to wear just a hoodie? If you've got long hair, is it enough to wear a hoodie? Are you going to need, if you're female and you don't want people to know that you're female, are you going to wear more of a bulky getup to disguise your gender? I could see a female dressing like this more so than a male, if that makes sense. J. Jason says, common thief doesn't want the impersonating an officer charge. Theft seems to be minor, but murder. Well, but again, what criminals sit there thinking and weighing, well, I'll be in real bad trouble if I do this, but I won't be in as bad trouble if I do that. I don't think anybody who is willing to go break into a church and commit vandalism along the way, breaking glass to get into locked doors and whatnot at a church, place where they don't belong, if they're willing to do that, I don't think they're, really sweating it too much about impersonating an officer. That's just my opinion on that. Coco Smala says, but if you're there to rob the church, why disguise your sex or your gender? Well, again, you don't want to be caught, right? So if you're a female, you disguise your gender, and it's going to be hard for them to to find you anyway if you've covered all your bases. But if they think they're after the wrong gender, then boy, you've really done a good job of covering your tracks at that point. Coco Smala says, I think the SWAT gear was sending a message. Do you think that it was sending, Coco? Daisy Warner, I hope I didn't accidentally put Coco in timeout just then. I'm still learning some of this, but I think it's maybe a wannabe cop who's been denied from the force, or so Missy wouldn't shoot because maybe they knew Missy was armed. If she saw a cop, she wouldn't shoot. Possibility. The thing that's, I got to leave here in just a minute. We've been at it over an hour. I'll just kind of close with saying, Missy, probably most women, and if you look at Missy's workout attire that she's wearing in the pictures that we've seen of her, it's usually like leggings, things that don't have pockets or anything. If she had a gun, I mean, she had a gun in the truck, but it'd be difficult to carry that into the church. And she's got equipment that she is trying to transport from the truck into the church. So even if she was thinking about her gun that morning, she really could not get it until after she had moved certain things into place, if that makes sense. So it'd be interesting to know if that was her intention, to get her gun after moving things, and that it just didn't get to that point because she heard a noise or something and went into the church to check it out. But anyway, I got to close this. Sorry things weren't always quite organized today, but still learning how to handle the graphics and switching back and forth between live and graphics. Us being able to talk and discuss the case, and I want the momentum of that to continue between now and the 5-year mark, and just get more and more people interested in this case and talking about it, and keep the pressure on the police to what they can do to solve this crime. So hopefully there'll be something for them to report to us at the 5-year mark. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and end things here in just a second. It's been great to have all of you here today. I appreciate all of you being here. And remember, gumshoestories.com is your source to read blogs about the case and to read case-related documents. Tell people that are interested in true crime and interested in the Missy Bevers case about my channel and about the website, because there's a lot of good information there, and I just love talking about the case and getting new people to be up to speed on it, so that so that we can discuss it. That's it for Gumshoe Stories. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day and stay safe and be kind to one another.